what was cut off was literally the most important thing that we've ever said on this podcast.
You guys on.
And welcome back to Tears on the Mountaintop. Just kidding.
In the wall room.
In the wall room. Oh, for real. Okay.
Whew.
Start us up, girl. Welcome to Sisterhood.
Episode 7.
Episode 7. Wow.
Weird.
I know. Wow.
That's over half a year of doing this.
Recording. Yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome back. Thank you for coming back.
Yeah.
We
Absolutely.
appreciate you.
I know that, sure, we're doing it, but to see that people are listening and I'm guessing then connecting
Yeah.
feels really dope.
I've heard some really great stories, just, of friends, loved ones, or just friends of friends saying, like, wow, I listened in, it touched me, or, oh, I can relate, or I didn't know that about you.
Yeah.
And I feel like those are my favorite. They're like, I didn't know that, because it's like, yeah, girl, we're getting deep.
Yeah.
Deeper and deeper.
And quite honestly, when we started planning today's episode,
Wow. It was kind of what would you say, like a little bit of a fight.
yeah, quite
Like,
honestly, it was like some of the things that we were planning were like, okay, well, we've already kind of covered that. Like, I feel like we've covered all of like the super
intro.
surface stuff,
Yeah.
and this is like,
Let's get into the nitty gritty.
yeah,
Start to
this
go
is
deeper.
number 7. This is the end of the week. This
Yeah.
is
Yeah. And it's giving, like, also, like, getting to the thick of the year.
yeah,
The, like, maybe the new year, new me has kind of worn off.
yeah,
And all those long list of goals, you're just, like, editing,
yeah,
maybe shortening, and that's kind of what we're going to get into today, is, like, okay, what is the nitty gritty? Like, where are we at? We're going to check our pulse, which is actually perfect. What's your 2 weeks in giving?
So
what is it feeling like? Where it's April, mid-April?
my 2
It's
weeks
like-
in, well, it's spring.
Yeah.
It is a little bit of a different spring than I'm used to.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, or I don't even know if it's a different spring that I'm used to. I think it's a different spring than what I remember. It could be that it's always like this.
Yeah.
But when I think of spring, I think, okay, like newness, like energy,
Fresh.
vibrance,
Blooming.
like,
Yeah.
oh, we've been
Yeah.
locked in the house for winter, and
Mhm.
now it's
For
time to
spring.
pop out.
Yeah.
And like, I haven't really felt ready to
do all that.
do that.
Yeah.
And we started this month. We actually did a garage sale,
We did.
and
Wow.
I don't know. We've never our family, our parents never did garage
We
sales.
ended up doing that.
Our dad always said that they're a waste of time.
All right, which is not true
Yeah.
for everyone.
Yeah.
But we didn't have the experience of, like, the dots on the things
Yeah.
and taking cash and giving that. Like, that was our experience. So we kind of made it into, like, a Cowboy Carter listening party / our friends came through.
Yeah.
So shout out to the homies.
Yeah.
They made it worth our while.
And it
It was
started.
fun.
It didn't start that fun though.
No, it started quite slow.
Yeah.
And I think really quickly we did realize that, like, you know what, we out here. So we out here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I will say that, like, my favorite part about it was, like, kind of being real with myself about, like, the things that I had. We moved, it's been almost a year since we've been in this house. And there was definitely a lot of stuff in the garage that, like, we said, okay, we're going to get to in the first couple months.
Sure.
And, going through those things, I was noticing that, like, even after not having seen them in a year at this point or
Mhm.
more,
Mm-hmm.
I still was kind of, like, clutching things
Holding
as
on
if
to
they
things.
were needs.
Yes.
Weird.
Absolutely. And that is the part that was kind of interesting, is, like, we had this idea of, like, spring cleaning, which is kind of what we're going to kind of talk about today. And initially, I think we have these feelings of, like, oh, we're going to get rid of things. We're just going to toss it, throw it in the bag, keep a little bit here, and, like, keep it moving. But once you start to really delve into what you have, maybe things you purchased, maybe things you were given, it does get really hard to like separate from those things.
Yeah.
So I was having some separation anxiety for sure.
Yeah.
Like, or also realizing that like, ooh, I haven't touched these things since last spring, last summer. So I'm like, am I gonna pop out? I'm gonna use this, wear this again. I remember when I got this, and so it really was tough to separate myself from the things, which is why I'm just like thinking about all the stuff that I actually kept. That's the whole tea. That's really what it is. It's like we still have a lot of stuff left over.
Yeah.
And yeah, just another chapter of like, okay, next step is post yard sale. What do we do next?
Yeah. Yeah. So is that how you're feeling 2 weeks into?
Yeah, you know what? I think for me, same. Like, we talked about like our birthdays, and usually how we feel around our birthdays are very specific. And for me, I'm a spring baby, so my birthday is coming, and so the next time we do the show, it had already passed. So, shout out to the Taurus girlies. But it's like usually for me, I go and I hibernate during the winter. And probably like a lot of us, I just feel like I just kind of like it's colder, it's darker earlier, you just kind of do your thing. For me, I always feel like I go into hibernation, and my hibernation is like work out. I try to eat better. I try to like pop out come spring because it's about to be my birthday, so it's like pop out. I thought it was giving like butterfly, but it's still very much giving caterpillar. And I don't feel like I'm ready to come out of that cocoon yet. I don't feel like I'm fully blossoming. And I think at the top of the month, I was really kind of feeling down on myself because it was just like, well, why aren't you ready? Why don't you have these things in order? It's time. And it's like now midway through, I'm realizing that, you know what? You still need to give yourself some grace. Even though you didn't hit everything from January 1 and like, you may not be where you think you should be. It's always also a year thing for me when it's a new year coming in. I'm like, dang. It's reflection to be like, dang, I'm about to be this age. Like, did I do all the things? And so I'm trying to give myself grace.
Yeah.
I just realized like I'm where I need to be right now. And, let's revisit the things that I said I wanted to do and like just be better.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the vibe.
I think something that you kind of spoke to and how I've been feeling as well is like in reflection, remembering that it's still a transition. And even though, we have this idea that like spring comes, the sun is out, right. The flowers are blooming, all those things are so beautiful. And also, I think part of giving yourself grace is remembering that, like, I know for me at least, any transition, even if it's going from, like, something that's a little bit, not as great to something that might, feel a little bit better, there's still, like, an adjustment period that I have to remember that, like, I require.
Right.
That part. And that it doesn't just happen that now that we're separating from the cold and the darker, days, that like there's still transition period, and that's okay.
Into that. Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. I feel like, sometimes I get, caught up in social media. I get caught up in like comparison or feeling like I'm just not enough. And I think the first part really is being real with yourself and being like, well, how do I feel? And then why do I feel that? Then we can address like how to make it better or how to like adjust. And I think for me, like I'm going to start just getting back to my affirmations.
Yeah. Like
whenever I get back to the bottom floor of like the foundational things, I always feel better. So I got to get back to the things that make me feel good again. And like when I'm having a tough time, just like revisit those things.
Yeah.
And blossom that way.
I feel that. I received that.
Period. That's it. Perfect. That goes into this week's Sis Picks. And I'm going to be really transparent. I feel like when we were discussing and like breaking down these things, topics to talk about being genuine and authentic in the place that we are currently, I feel like it wasn't as flowery, if we can use little spring terms, as maybe we've normally been, or just times in this past year.
Yeah.
It's feeling a little bit more like we were kind of trying to describe or have metaphors for, like, okay, maybe we have seed in the ground, but maybe our garden has withered a little bit. Maybe it's, maybe that the snow has left it kind of looking crazy, a little bit off, or we might have some blooms that maybe need some more attention, but it's not a full garden right now. Not feeling like, and can you speak to that?
And also maybe there's some weeds, that we haven't tended to,
right?
Because we've been in this, like, while it might not be like the brightest place, we've been in like a little bit of a safe space in that it's been, us at home,
right, cozy,
without having to do as much like looking in the mirror, I think.
Yeah.
And then the sun comes out, and you're looking in the mirror like,
hold on now, hold on. Mm-hmm. I need to be, realistic. I need to look at this thing. So we're going to talk about, our sis picks are going to kind of talk about the weeds in our life. And I call it the big three because, well, I love little kind of sports terms, but also just because it's just like, I want us to get real and nitty gritty and maybe, kind of allow you friends that are listening to do the same. What are some of the top 3 things that are weeds in your life that, if God could said tomorrow or tonight when you go to sleep, I'm pulling these weeds up first thing. Like, what are those 3 that you're like, well, you know what? If this, and that was pulled, I'd have a better start.
Yeah.
Not that everything would be perfect, but I feel like my garden could really thrive. Maybe a little faster or a little bit more. What do you feel like one of your big 3 are?
So we're going to go back and forth. I'm not
Let's go back and forth, yeah.
I'm not like
not going to off
everything. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool.
And you don't even, no order, no specific order, just literally like, yeah.
Okay. If in like my reflection of where I'm at, the thing that like screams the loudest, the weed that like, well, I'll back up a little bit because our last place that we lived together was like the first time where we really ever had to tend to any type of outside garden or anything like that.
Oh, that's right.
And I didn't realize, when people are like, oh, it's growing like weeds. I didn't realize that weeds be growing in there like trees.
Yeah, they could.
At a certain point. And that was new to me.
Yeah.
And so if I'm thinking about it like that, the tree that I really feel like I have to, spray.
Yeah. You need that.
Because I can't even just, I gotta like spray first.
It's rooted.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's deep.
Is just like this. Whew, we are really airing it out,
honey. Get into it.
It's like this idea that how I'm showing up and what I have to offer has to be enough for my friends and people around me.
Okay.
Right? Like, if I'm, giving what I feel like is enough, then that should be enough.
For the friendship,
for the relationship.
But do it be enough? Or it's for you, to you it is?
And to me, it's like, okay, well, I feel like I'm giving.
Yeah.
But I think the part that, like, is really the weed is if someone says, well, that's not actually enough for me, like, validating that. And also, I think it is definitely a point of, like, decision of, like, okay, well, if I am truly giving all that I got, then am I, do I have what it is that they need, right? I think the weed part about it is that sometimes I feel like, well, that's all I can give, and
you need to be happy with it.
You need to be happy with it, and if you're not happy with it, that's on you.
That's not on me. Yeah.
And that's not the spirit that, like, I thought I was giving. and that's not the spirit that I want to give.
Yeah.
Right? Do I think it's valid that, like, in certain seasons it can be challenging to, like, pour into everything? Absolutely.
Adulting.
Absolutely.
Adult relationships.
Yeah,
that's really what
they're
it's speaking
hard.
to. They are tough.
But I think I also have to make sure that I'm, like, being, like, I'm validating people's feelings and experiences when what I have offered might not be what they need in close friendship.
Yeah.
And so the weed that I'm trying to, you know, work on is being real with myself for what I have to offer.
Mm-hmm.
And then holding myself accountable to offer what I can.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and not just blanking it at sometimes I think I might blanket it with, oh, well, I'm overwhelmed.
Do you sometimes feel like, because I feel like it is easy to fall into this place of, like, well, that's my boundary. You know how people throw up boundaries and they'll say it in a way that's like, well, I'm giving you all I have to give. It's my boundary that I, you know, pour into myself right now, or whatever it may be. Because you have to kind of, I guess it's like a thin line between that, having a boundary and then it being a consistent thing that you do with multiple people, right? So how do you find that balance? Or are you trying to find
I don't think that I ever am like, I don't think that I ever am like, well, that's my boundary. I think it's more so I become a little bit avoidant if I feel like, oh, well, maybe they don't feel like I've given enough.
Mm-hmm.
So
like they voice
like, that. Or if they don't. It might be in their actions. It might be, you know, like you can pick up on, like, if someone is feeling like, you know, some type of way.
Right.
And I think that at that point, I start justifying myself and my actions. I'm like, well, you know what? Like, they might just not know what I have on my plate. They might not understand. And it's not that I never blame that person, but I don't think that I've always, like, really, like, validated that experience in a way that, like, is going out of my way to say, hey, I get why you would feel it. And not that I wouldn't say that
like
if they brought it up.
in your
if they brought it up, absolutely, like.
Yeah. So you're saying basically you let it kind of go on without discussing it. And then when they do maybe bring it up, or when it comes up, when you see them, are you then discussing it? Are you the first to be, like, apologetic, or let's talk about it? Or are you just kind of letting it go under the rug kind of?
I think that definitely apologetic.
Okay.
For sure apologetic, because it's like, if I made you feel that way, I get why you would feel that way.
Right.
It's the other part of, Angelica, like, are there things that you can do within your sphere of capability that shows up a little bit differently?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think that in those situations, I can be like, well, I'm so sorry, but this is what I have. You know?
Yeah.
And not that that's not okay.
Yeah.
But if I'm, like, if I'm really being thoughtful about the time that I'm spending, it's possible to squeeze some things in.
Yeah. And also, I feel like it's a lot of communication, too, or lack thereof, when you don't, you know, follow up or whatever, follow through.
Yeah, because I'm an anxious, avoidant girly. And if I feel like you're feeling any type of way, like,
you're going to fall back. Fair. You know? But I think it's also important maybe to express that to your friend.
Yeah,
you know,
for
that
sure.
you trust and love, and be like, this is where I'm at, and this is really something I'm trying to work on, and also, this is kind of who I am. You know? Because I feel like if somebody's shading you for, like, that part, it's like, hey, well, you're doing your best. But if you're not actually doing your best, I could see where that could be a lead.
Yeah. And I think also it's like reevaluating what my best is and could be.
And updating it.
Yeah. And, like, there's a couple things that are, like, my secondary weeds that, like, I'll talk about in a second, that, like,
kind of, or maybe the reason why that maybe is so big, right?
Yeah.
For real.
But let's go. I'm gonna pass the baton.
Okay, so we're gonna stick with the friendship run. Yeah. Okay. I think one of my biggest weeds, and probably again a product of my second two, is we were kind of talking about how we show up in friendships and how we show up is a little bit different, I feel like, or honestly just our comfortability level. Like we were saying that like you are like so good in groups and you just are like so comfortable in that. And I think it's just because I'm not I haven't always lived in that space of being comfortable in that. It's not that I don't love it. I'm just kind of like a newbie in it sometimes. So I'm not as comfortable as I want to be. It's like sometimes I feel like in some of these weed situations that we want to pull, we have a vision of what it could look like, and you're like, "Ooh, I wish I'd be a little bit more like that." Or even you maybe your other friends are. Sometimes I see you, and I'm like, "I wish I was a little more like that. I could pull that from you, pull that from Grace, and like make me into what my vision is." But as we're working on it and pulling things out, I think like from past friendship hurt is where my weed started to grow and like take root. And hurt is it's like trauma. It's like something that sadly kind of sticks with you. And sometimes whether the hurt came from situations where there was lack of communication or there was some. Most of mine are like knockout dragouts. Like you said, they're a little bit more like they take maybe like root over time, and like some doubt starts to seep in or some situation happens, and then maybe the friendship becomes broken. And I think I've had situations where that has happened and just took root and slowly over time started to grow. And then I think I just started to put up walls even from like a young girl, just trying to show up in the playground, to like showing up in college, to showing up in the workplace, like just all those different spaces where you're trying to meet friends and connect. And maybe you're just not maybe finding your tribe, but you might be finding people along. You find people and connect usually either way in these pods. But I feel like for me right now, I feel like I'm probably finding my tribe for the first time, in a real way. But not that the people before haven't taught me how to, and given me nice, great things along the way. But I saw a lot of ugly things about myself too, or ways that I could be. So anyways, all that to be said, I think my big weed is like friendship hurt, and I'm trying to just chop that baby down, because it's like a lot of it's out of your own insecurity, and it's like, for what? Like, what are we holding on to for me in the past that I want to be able to let go? You get to that point.
Yeah. So like the way you move because of the hurt, or
the way that I show up, because of past things. It's like you're holding on to something that you just cannot let go, and then it just breeds other things, other insecurities, other hurting other people. And I've seen myself do that. I've been part of that, been like victim to that, like all the things. And so I feel like I'm learning how to be a good friend again, and letting go of that weed would be and is what I want to chop down to be super helpful. So we can keep growing.
I think my second one is kind of like you said, can give way to that big one. And for me, it's like overcoming overwhelm, and like and not letting that stop me from whatever the things that is going to be my best self in friendship and sisterhood. I think that because of some anxieties, because of the places that I don't feel like I am the strongest, right? Like I'll give you an example. I do not enjoy crafting messages that are written and that can be reread.
Ooh, child, she don't.
And I put so much energy into making sure that anything that I've typed
Wording.
and like whether it be text, whether it be email,
so it's not like punctuation, it's like tone.
No, it's like tone. Like
Yeah.
I want to make sure that what you read that comes from me is conveyed.
Yeah.
And
properly.
I have so much like fear that it's going to be read wrong.
Man.
That like I avoid writing because I know it's going to take me 12, 13 minutes to do
Not
one
12, 13.
No, for real.
Yeah.
Mixed with like getting distracted, mixed with, you know,
the text that comes through.
Right.
Yeah,
like there's layers to it.
Yeah.
But I think like because of those, like because I have now attached these negative feelings to the act of communicating written,
right.
You know, I'd rather not. And it's led to some of these like
lack of
people feeling as though like that I'm not showing up in that way when it's like, oh, it's just a text.
Yeah. That's not even.
Oh my goodness,
it's bigger than
that response has always been like, okay, like to you it's just a text.
Yeah.
But to me, like it really is a whole process, and I won't say that I necessarily know what overcoming that is, but I think like recognizing it has been really helpful for me because it has just allowed me to, going back to the grace thing, it's allowed me to give grace to the fact that is a struggle.
Absolutely.
But also now that you know better, do better, I gotta find the tools. You know, I gotta find the tools so that a text doesn't take so much energy, so that it doesn't make the people that I really love and really care for like feel as though I don't.
Yeah, fair. That's really special that you shared that though, because I feel like people don't probably talk about that, and they definitely feel that way, and then they end up not sending it, which I feel like that kind of goes into my next one, waiting to the last minute to ask for help. And then it being last minute and, you know, you feeling embarrassed to ask or it's like too late. This happens to me quite a bit. And as someone who, I just struggle with focusing on like, you know, especially multiple projects, juggling multiple things. I can procrastinate too. I've been procrastinating like girly for a little while now, for about at least since high school. I can remember just like, you know, waiting last minute to do papers or, you know, and I feel like we all can relate in different ways, but I'm really, you know, almost to the point where it's like, am I getting a thrill out of waiting to the last minute? Or like, am I just getting that rush of like, can I get it done? It becoming a sport, that's an issue. So, and it's not really that as much because I feel like as an adult, you're really just not trying to play with your life like that for real. Yeah. But it has, you know, it's still something that I want to work on and get better at because, again, you can let projects fall through. But most of the time, I'll say when people are depending on me, I'm a lot better at like getting it done. When it's something that I know I need to do to get me to the next level or another place, I tend to procrastinate more, where it's like, it's kind of on me. So if it's on me, you know, and I don't want to be that way. I want to be able to bet on myself. I want to be able to say, like, if it's on me, it's getting done. Yeah. You know, and be able to stand in that. So I think, like you said, using your tools to really, like, schedule out things. I'm pretty good at putting things in the calendar because that's kind of what keeps me straight. But maybe having somebody to check on me and say, like, hey, did you get that done? Did you go ahead and turn in that, you know, grant, you know, paragraph or whatever entry? Did you go ahead and like, you said you wanted to get 5 more clients this month. Like, did that happen? You know, maybe having some back and forth with somebody to be like, no, I did it. Or like, I got 3, you know, or whatever it may be. So I think that part is important just to put some new things in place because I just know how I can be. Yeah. And I can get kind of lax with it.
And I feel you. I feel you. Heavy. Yeah. And it's interesting because I think like it's really nice to have balance in friendship and like groups because between us, like we're cut from the same cloth in that area, like, you know, and we can we can show each other grace in that area because we both know what that's like. And we know, you know, that it's not, you know, when older people say like, blame it on the head and not the heart kind of thing. Like,
and we do that for each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And we do. And also, it's also nice, like, that we also have other friends who are on it and who are like super type A and, you know, check us with grace.
Yeah.
You know, like,
for sure.
Our friends are so supportive and like they very much so see the best in us. Like,
they do. They really do.
In such a sweet way.
Those are our sisters, yeah.
And absolutely. Like, even Grace. Like, Grace is our little sister.
Yeah.
She doesn't have the same exact bird. Like, that's not her story as much.
Yeah.
But it's nice that, like, she shows us.
No, shows us grace.
Yeah,
for real. Because, not to cut you off, but this just reminded me of Grace for a short period of time, like when I first started my business, was my assistant. And when I tell you she was on it and being like, hey, you said you're going to get this done. I need you to do that so I can do this. Like, that's her energy. Yeah. That's what she's giving when it comes to getting things done. And she's a mom now, so it's really like A1. Mm-hmm. Like, she's like, okay, I have from 8 to 12 to get this done. I'm going to knock it all out. And then be able to go out with my homies. Like, she's really good about that stuff. Not to cut you off, but yeah. Grace be giving grace, but she about her business.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay. Did we talk about... This is yours. This is your go. Big three. Third one. Let's go.
Okay. So, another weed that I gotta pull out. Yeah. Because it very much so is bleeds one of the reasons why... the other two are there.
What is it?
Is doom scrolling.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That burst of dopamine that you get from scrolling on the socials is so harmful.
Rewarding. Yeah.
Like,
it is.
It's like, it feels good, but like, then it doesn't.
Yeah,
and then it makes you, you know, feel really bad about the time that you spend. It's like, well, dang, like,
I could have been doing something on my list.
And so now I am overwhelmed because now I do have all these things. And like, when really I just maybe needed to take a little nap during that time so that like I was rested and I can, you know,
start over,
make the call, or I can, you know, finish the task so that I am more, you know, available to my sisters and my friends, you know, like, you know, really and truly being real about the time that you spend is tough.
Yeah, it is, because social media has become such a... I was telling her before, like, you know, there was a time I had to kind of chill a little bit off the scrolling because it was getting to the point where, like, my alarm for my phone would go off and my finger would go from the alarm and almost as I was asleep would go to one of the platforms. You know what I mean? Like, it would just take me there, like, as like my morning wake up. And I just was like, yo, like, getting to that point of it just being like alarm, boom, like, what are we looking at? It is kind of like, it got a little scary for me for a second because I'm like, dang, like, I haven't even brushed my teeth, no shade. You know, I haven't even like made my bed. I'm kind of just in bed. And like you said, it's so easy to do. And they make it addicting, you know? So it's like you have to give yourself grace because it's like it's made that way. But what do you think, how do you think you can pull that weed? Like, what are you thinking to combat that?
Oh, I didn't know we were talking about.
Oh, period. Not the
just picking that.
How are we about to combat it? We are gonna pick it. Okay, got it. Well, can I give you some advice?
Absolutely.
Give you some advice because again, I had my little, you know, what I felt was like giving an addiction, and I was like, girl, I need to chill. And I know a lot of people do this. I think for me to really stop, I obviously had to delete off my phone. Yeah. That's number one.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's so easy to put it back, but it's a little more work to put it back.
Sure.
And so after I did that, I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'm not really going to probably take that much time to download it, put it back on. What I also started doing is like kind of bringing it back. What did I start doing? I'm trying to think. Gosh, what did I start doing? Because I've had to do this a lot of times, like over a year. I literally would, so I delete off my phone, and then I would only be on it like weekends, right? And then that was like, yeah, but I'd be on it all weekend. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So then I was like, dang, like, okay, bet, like, I got to get better at this. So maybe when I would get on, another strategy is that I wouldn't scroll. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't scroll my feed. I would just look at stories. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And like everybody has the way that they do it. Like, I don't look at nobody's story, or I scroll. Yeah. So it's like figuring out like, what do you spend the most time doing that makes you just like completely fall off? Mm-hmm. Usually it is scrolling, because like stories, you might not have that many, or you might not really care what everybody's doing. You know what I mean? You have certain ones where like, boop, boop, saw that, I can check out now. Mm-hmm. So it's just like certain little strategies that I think you just kind of trick your brain. And then I started, you know how like, I don't know about you guys, but a lot of times I would be taking photos within the app or taking videos in the app. I started using my regular camera more, so that it would be like, I would have those all on my camera, and like I would go to that rather than go to the app and open it up. But anyways, I feel like you got to figure out what works for you. Mm-hmm. But those are some of the strategies that I had to get really strategic. I mean, these are like war tactics. So be like, let me walk it back. And then I start to feel like what it was like to not go to just scrolling every time I grab my phone. Yeah. It was like, I don't really know where my phone's at. That's okay. Yeah. Like if I hadn't seen what was going on for the day, that's okay. Yeah. You know, I did feel like I was a little disconnected, because that was where I kind of got my news. I think that's the only thing. Mm-hmm. But I did feel free from knowing everything that happened right at the moment, all the time. Yeah. You know, and that changed my day.
And in hindsight, yeah, there really isn't anything that like,
you don't have to see.
I have to see. Right. You know? And if I'm not digging deep, right? Because we can surface it and be like, oh, I just really need to make sure that I know what my friends are doing. Like, sure. Right. My friends don't even really post for real.
And I'm saying
that much, you know what I mean?
Right. Like not their pictures from like the vineyard. Yeah. It just be like,
and if it was, I might have already been there.
Right. Like, if they're my friends, I probably saw it. Yeah.
Now, exactly. Does it like allow you to like stay abreast of what's going on and like the people who you don't see and talk to every day? Absolutely. Sure. But
you need to know.
But do I have to?
It's that part. It's that part.
And would it be better if I use that time to actually text them? And if it takes 12 minutes,
and are you finishing your other big 3? Yes, you are, queen. Thank you. Okay, that fixes like 3 things for you. Dang, that's really connected to like 1. But that's real. That's where we're at.
Don't feel easy.
Oh no. It's gonna be the hardest thing to do all month. I'm not saying this. Not for sure not gonna be easy, but you have a solution. Yeah. And so then you have to decide, you know, what you're going to do or how you're going to go about it. Like I said, you can figure it out for you. Yeah. What I do for me may not work for you, but you figure it out for you, you know?
And you know what? I actually kind of like that, because it's like, you know, when people talk about habits and when you have a habit that you're trying to break, like you really have to replace it with something. So like, could I say that every time I want to open up Instagram, I send a text to someone who I haven't talked to?
And then it gets y'all talking more, and then you're really not on there. I mean, you're not on there as much. Yeah. And you're filling that time with your loved ones.
And quite honestly, I think it also would, like, kind of put a salve on the overwhelm of the task of texting, because the more you do something that feels really hard,
easier it is.
The more you realize that it's not as hard.
Right.
You know?
Or you might even decide to, like, do more things for yourself. Like, maybe you're like, you know, I'm going to do my nails. Or, like, I'm going to read this book I've been meaning to get to. Or I'm just going to take a nap. Yeah. You know? And then you're rested for the next thing you need to do. Whatever it may be. So, I think, like, if we could get back to, like, not being just mindlessly going. Yeah. That's the tough part. Like, not doing it at all is cool. But, like, it does get kind of crazy when you're, like, and if anybody, I almost also feel like if somebody needs to get to you or talk to you, they can still call you or get to you or something's going on in the world, like, you'll probably figure it out pretty quick.
Yeah.
There are people out there.
And the things that I really find out about the world on social media really have to do nothing with, like, things I really need to know. It's like, what are celebrities got going on? Like, who broke up?
Right.
Like,
who's wearing what?
And it's like, if I really don't care that much.
Yeah.
But it's kind of
just
interesting.
There. Yeah.
You know?
It's juicy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Listen, we are knocking down the barriers. Okay, my last one. Basically, mine kind of tied into your overwhelm and feeling overwhelmed, but mine also goes into like a step further, which, gosh, is probably one of the worst things I could do. But sometimes I get so overwhelmed that I become paralyzed, and it's hard for me to move on whatever it is that's overwhelmed me. And I just feel like that's just such, it's almost like a tactic, I feel like, of the enemy, or like, you know, just of like this thinking that like, oh, I can't do it, so I won't try.
Yeah.
You know, or again, it's too far gone. Let's just not, you know, let's just take a nap. Let's just, you know, lay down. That's like my go-to is, I feel like it's just act like it's not there until I really have to face it, or, you know, and then it becomes so big. So I feel like I really would love for, and I will work on it, and I want that weed to be like handled, because you miss a lot of blessings that way, I feel like, and you miss a lot of opportunities to just even fall and figure out how to get it back or do better next time. You know what I mean? Like, you miss the growth.
Yeah.
So I don't want to do that moving forward. So I love for that to be pulled up. Oof. And that's woo!
We recently talked about grace and accountability.
Man,
we really are,
this
you know,
steps.
trying to attack that piece. You know,
Absolutely.
I think that when we talked about it last, it was a little more flowery.
Yeah.
You know?
Just a little grace and accountability.
Just a little.
Child,
but like, when
about?
you dig into like specifically where do I need to hold myself accountable?
The rut. Yeah. You gotta get to the rut. Yeah.
It's not fun, but it's also freeing.
Yeah.
And to say it out loud, to have people, you know, validate your experience.
Right.
It's so much better than like just holding on to it and it just being the thing that makes you feel so bad about yourself, that makes you feel so much guilt, you know, like even if you're not yet ready or you don't have the steps to fix it.
Yeah.
I think talking about it is so healthy. And
it is.
It allows for like human experience to be just that, human experience. And like everybody is good at things and everybody has things that they're not good at. And the things that I'm good at aren't the things that you're good at, and the things that you struggle with aren't the things that I struggle with, but the thing that ties us together is that we're all struggling with something.
Period. And we're all human. That is what makes us human.
Yeah.
So yeah, first step is just identifying the problem. Check.
It's hot. It's summer or it's still spring. I don't know.
It's warm in here. It is getting warm.
Man. Okay, so
we got to the breakdown.
Man. But quite honestly, we kind of have started talking about the breakdown, you know, like because here's where we'll officially step into the next segment, which is the code breakdown. Yeah. Our code is spring cleaning, revisiting the neglected garden, and it's, you know, we're coming out of winter, and in some ways, I kind of feel like winter, while it can, you know, it's cold and, you know, uncomfortable in that way.
Dark early, all the things.
In some ways, for me, it's a little bit of a comfort space, too. Yeah. Because the expectation is that everybody's in grind mode. The expectation is that our heads are down. The expectation isn't that we're linking up for brunch. Yeah. It's not that it's super social. And kind of talking to like the things that I struggle with, that allows for, you know, less of a
social meter or like
a social
calendar.
expectation, you know, like the
Yeah,
expectation that we need to like be in constant communication because what's the next thing?
Right.
Where are we going? What
Right.
we doing? You know?
What we doing? Where to brunch at?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I said this before, like I can be anxious avoidant, and so for me, the code of, you know, stepping into spring, transitioning into this season is like recognizing that, you know, validating my own experience and you know, honoring that it's tied to something and it's not just like, oh, Angelica, you're the worst at this.
Right.
But then like having time to reflect and think about next steps. And you know, we don't typically have it where we kind of talked about those things earlier in the segment.
Okay. No, we haven't got the confessions yet.
Here we are.
Off top. Yeah.
What's that code look like for you?
Well, it's kind of funny that you said, like, I did kind of allude to it in the beginning, like, talking about, like, winter is usually my time of, like, hibernation. And honestly, it's usually my time of, like, I guess renewal. Like, it's almost like I'm, like, gassing up and gearing up for the spring. And so I think of it as, like, you know, kind of like bears, you know, they hibernate. And then it's like they gear up to have the energy to go and go hunt or go and do whatever, you know, they need to. And I feel like I'm not really coming out of winter in the usual space, mentally, physically, emotionally, but I'm kind of feeling like that's a good thing because I think I've been working on things that I don't usually in the winter that are going to benefit me more this spring, this bloom. I didn't come out swinging. I don't feel like I'm coming out like all not perfect, but just like this like flower. It's more like we come in quiet. We come in humble. We're coming in with a plan to do new things, you know? So like, yeah, I feel like, you know, that metaphor of like our garden and our seed being maybe like sown and underneath the ground, but like not quite blooming, but we're like meticulously like creating. And I feel like that's just the space that I'm in. And I like that it's different because I might be a little concerned if it was the same. You know what I mean? I might be a little more like pompous or more like, hey, I'm here, we're doing it again, but I'm doing the same cycle over and over, seeing no change, seeing nothing fresh. And so I feel like, you know what, God, like, thank you for doing a new thing in me at the top of this year to where I didn't think I had it all figured out. I didn't know that I just knew where I was going to go and how it was going to turn out. It hasn't been that way for me this year, but I've still enjoyed it. I still had fresh experiences. You know, it's just like, it just feels different. Yeah. And so I think different is good because that means change is happening. Yeah. You know, so it's uncomfortable initially, but I feel like, okay, cool. Like I'm getting comfortable with uncomfortable and maneuvering in a new way. Yeah. That's what it feels like.
And I think being your sister and like being able to see, you know, what it looked like last year, the year before, year before, right, and what it is now, like I think that feels so much more your speed because like it's just a little bit more
just like a steady pace.
Steady. Yeah. It's a little more steady. I think that like in other times, you know, I could see there being a little bit of like, you know, imposter syndrome or like not really feeling like you knew or were being your full authentic self because like you're going from like one extreme to another and like seeing you meet in the middle is like seeing and knowing who you are within our friendship and with our sisterhood and like I always compare myself and how I'm showing up in the world to like, is it the same that I show up with Keisha? Yeah. Because that's who I really am. Right. If I'm like being true and honest to like who I am, everything, like it's what I do and how I am with my sister. Yeah. And watching you be who you are with everybody. Yeah.
It's different.
in a consistent way. It's just, I'm sure that it feels so good.
Yeah. It's making me emotional. It does. I think, I haven't always been just the most like assured in myself, and it's a peace that you get when you start to be like, you know what? I'm great.
Yeah.
And I'm great because I know that I'm flawed, and I know that I can get better and I can work on it, and I can it's like you never end the race. He's always going to keep going, but like, can you learn? Can you fall? Can you get up? Can you learn again? Can you maybe help someone else along the way? Can it not just be about me? Can you be humble? Can you be kind? It's like the things that really I feel like make what I feel like life fulfilling for me now has changed from being like pedal to the metal, gas all the time. And it's like, you can't sustain that.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's just not cute on me. Not going to hold you. And I don't even point at anybody else. It's just not cute for me. It's not sustainable for me. I can get burnt out trying to go gas, the whole time. And then I also just don't like being super, like, just sitting in, whatever it is that I don't feel like I'm good at. I've always been someone who's just, me, like, just like, I want to figure it out. But to be able to give yourself grace, that's the harder part. And I think that's what we're talking about, being, even on this platform, being able to be like real.
Yeah.
And say it.
Yeah.
And not hide behind pretty words and like makeup and like, like dances online. Like, no, this is real shit. Like, we're trying to work on things to make us better humans out here for not just us, but for our communities.
Yeah.
For our kids, our families.
Yeah.
People that we don't even know.
Yeah.
And so I think when you want to do that work, it's like you really got to dig into yourself. And I think I'm for both of us, I see us doing it. I see us growing. So be like who you would be around your sister, and hopefully that's nice, but also like real. Yeah. Sisterhood.
And I think it's also cool because I think we maybe have alluded to this or said it before, but like our dad comes, drives over an hour every day, lugging his camera and like
every time we record, not every day. Oh, sorry, every day.
Every time we record, and lugs it up the stairs of our house.
4
and, like,
flights. Period.
And
the love
really like believes in who we are as people. And right before recording today, we really kind of had that time to like talk about what this means to us and talk about how it's uncomfortable, and like he watches it every time and he sees and supports and believes so much in it. And I don't know, it's just something about, I don't even really know why I said that, but at the end of the day,
it's about being real. It's about, I mean, I think, just to add on to what you're saying, is like, you think that these platforms need to have so much reach outside of even your community, that it's like, even if it was just the 20 people it's worth it. And we were talking about our views, and hopefully we look back at this and there's more than but even if there wasn't more, I know we're gonna run this back and be like, bruh, you remember? But even if there wasn't, it would be enough for our homegirls to be like, you know what? I had one of my homegirls, I'm not going to say this, she said, I cried during that episode about identity. And I said, girl, you cried? She said, I was sobbing. Now, it takes a lot to make somebody sob, okay? And I'm a crier, but like, to really connect, all jokes aside, to really be like, you know what? Maybe I see myself in you. Maybe your story just kind of touched me. Maybe I just needed to laugh or hear something on my car ride. Like, that really is what it's about. So, our dad even believing in us and giving him a little joy is like, that's enough. And
it's not about the podcast. It's not about, putting it out. But I think that, it's the practice of having these conversations and making space for them. And I think that's the biggest thing for us right now. It's like, again, it's obviously not about the views. We're at month 7 and
we're not gonna talk about it. But where we at.
But I will keep coming up to this space, this upper room, for that conversation that we had with Dad, and like that conversation that you had with your homegirl, and the conversations that we're having with people who are, also wanting to have
deeper.
these types of conversations. And maybe they don't have a sister, or maybe they don't have a person that they feel comfortable having them with, but so much of feeling fulfilled in life, I think, has to do with feeling like your situation is valid, heard, seen, and understood.
That's all we want. That's all we want. Just to be seen, just to be heard. And in a place where like everything can feel so loud. And just on a repeat and a reel and a and it just not feel real all the time. Oh, that's real. Yeah. But I think us being real and authentic and genuine, I hope that people feel that and see that, but I know it is. Yeah. And nobody can tell me that it's not. It's like one of those things where it's like, you know what? Like you said, if it's touch 1, 2, it's really real, and it's real to us, and it's authentic, and I hope it's coming across genuine. Yeah.
Especially in this episode, but in other ways, in other glimpses and episodes in the past, being more specific about what that is and what these feelings are. And like, I think that we say, or we run into conversations where there are general truths, right? The general truth being that everybody's going through something. Everybody's struggling. Even I said something like that, But like, to hear the specifics of someone's struggle, and to like know that like they recognize it as a struggle, so it's okay for you to recognize it as a struggle. Yeah. Like, it's safe to do that. And give examples. We're keeping it. We're not cutting it.
Well, we gonna keep it then. Keep it in the whole water bottle, honey. Put the jug in. Little tickle. Hold on. These allergies. No, I didn't talk about it in my 2 weeks in, but these allergies been kicking my whole behind, honey. From the top, honey. I don't know if you can.
We're not cutting it. No, we're not cutting it. Keep going. Keep going.
Allegra, Zyrtec, call me, honey. Your sponsor.
I think that we gotta do some confessions. I know that we've confessed a lot.
Felt like a confession, girl. Okay. All right. Okay, literally, in my notes, I wrote my truth. Okay? And so we're going to start there. I think my truth is such a, like, strong, short descriptor, or, like, short little tagline, but just real, because, I don't know, I feel like I've been wanting to do that more this year. Just walk in my truth and be confident in it and not defensive, if that makes sense. So, anyways, I wanted my sister confession to be talking about something that people may or may not know about me, but I'm like an extroverted loner. And I put /lover because I love people and I love to love, but I can be, and I can show up sometimes, and I don't know if this is a weed or it's maybe just like a little dandelion flower that just like, she's cute, but like, could we just kind of, work on it a little bit,
so she doesn't spread too much.
So she doesn't spread. There's not too many of them, right? Like, it's just cute, but it's also like, okay, what's your real purpose here? And so I think in being that, I've heard the term ambivert. Have you heard of that? It's like basically extrovert and a introvert, and I think I'm definitely giving that, but I think sometimes I tend to maybe lean into one more than the other. Like you said, I'm very much someone who can like live in extremes. So it can go from one side to the other. I'm not someone like, let's say for an example at a party, like I can be so extroverted in the beginning that I might lose steam, and then you may not find me for like 2 hours. And you can probably speak to that, right?
And where do you go?
I go anywhere else. I go to my room. I might leave the house. I mean, not totally. I never leave the premises. I'm not like an Irish goodbye girl, but I will leave a situation if I'm like, oh no, I need to go up. Like I'll go upstairs
And you come back though.
I come back.
Yeah.
I'm not straight, but I come back. And I think it's because sometimes I use so much of my gas so fast, or I just tend to. I don't know. Maybe I didn't take a nap that day. I don't know. At this point, I feel like my friends know this about me, so I try not to do it as often, for sure, and definitely not as long. But sometimes I just need a reset, and I'll take it. And they don't know this, but sometimes, like, I will stretch. Sometimes I'll go and listen to, like, calming music. I'm definitely a girly that will, like, put a cute little fireplace on in my room and just, like, take myself away for a few seconds. Now, there's a good and bad part to that, but I don't know. I feel like I'm someone who people may not initially think that I need that space sometimes, but sometimes I do. So that's just my truth. And just shout out to the girlies that, like, we're not on 10 all the time like people may think. Sometimes we need some calm and some rest and maybe some alone time. But maybe we just work on communicating that better. Maybe we work on, like I said, not taking as much time because you're like, hey, it's the middle of a celebration for me, or because that's like it. Like it could be anything, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just not gonna show up really great right now, and that's usually what ends up happening. I'm like, ooh, there's something that I'm not feeling I want to be right now, so I'm gonna take myself out for a second, take a breather, and then come back to the situation. So. Can you speak to that? I know you've been a part of that.
Yeah.
But how does that make you feel when when you're around that?
I think that my view of it.
You've been around so long. You're like,
that, like,
this year.
I know why.
Yeah.
In ways that you don't have to communicate. You don't have to say, hey, Angelica, like, this is a lot for me right now. I need to, which I think is nice, right? And I don't know that you owe that heads up to everybody. I think that when people know, it just, like, allows for there not to be any
I feel this type of way.
Feelings that, like, aren't really aligned with what really happened to come up, right? And I think that it's been really cool to see you, like, say it out loud, to people, even ahead of time.
Fair.
Like
if I'll be back. Yeah, for
because it's like, even if people have experienced it in our group of friends, I don't think that anybody has felt any type of way about it.
Yeah.
But I think it's really cool that you have, put some words to it.
Yeah.
And again, while it wasn't necessarily owed, I think, and that's another thing. I think like sometimes, there's a difference between things that you have to say and things that, like, just allow for more understanding when you do say it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like, there's kind of like this narrative that, like, you don't owe anybody explanation for like your boundaries. But it's like, if we're really talking about, like, friendship and sisterhood that, like, is really lasting, then the less misunderstandings, the better.
The better, because they be coming up anyway.
They're gonna come up.
Right, a little something, and communication. I feel like that's, like, a big thing. So it's a very weird. I guess now I'm talking about it, I feel a little bit, like, shy about it, but it's also just what it is. And it even happens with classes. Like, I'll teach 2-3 classes back to back, and I won't talk in between them. Like, I'll take the 30 minutes or whatever it is, and I'll just take a second, recharge. It's literally like recharging my battery, my charger, and then be a Disney princess again. And it's like, people are like, how do you do it? And it's like, I have to take time. And that's just how I'm able to show it.
But I also think it's dope that, like, you find the space that, like, that affects people the least amount. Like, it's not like you're going to the break room and, like, sitting with everybody that that might not know and understand, and, like, you're just sitting there, like,
with attitude. Well, that's what I'm saying. That's lessons learned, and that too. Like, I've been in I didn't know. You know, when you're younger, especially, you really don't know yourself yet. So you're just like, what? Why am I feeling like agitated? It's because, you know, you've been on 10 for maybe 3 hours. And if you don't sit down, honey, you are gonna, honestly, it's just like the littlest thing. Like, you're just gonna have attitude or whatever. You're just gonna be like short.
Right.
And it's unnecessary. And you just, maybe you needed some water. Maybe you need a snack. Like, most of these things can be fixed with like sunlight, water, snack, rest.
Basic human needs.
Absolutely. Literally, like, those things fix so many things for me. And I think once I figured that out, I'm like, oh, I just need to go outside for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, I just need to not talk for 10 minutes. So it's like, yeah, I guess that's just like, it's your 30s. It's just like,
know thyself.
Know yourself. Yeah, know yourself, babes. All right, let's roll out. Let's roll out with your truth.
All right, well, I don't know how, I don't like the way I wrote it.
Fish.
But I think my truth is that I am most successful with relationships that fit into my life puzzle.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, you know, when there's structure around seeing friends and sisters, like whether it's that we're in, that's why like college was so many of the things that I struggled with in adulthood and friendships didn't necessarily come up until it was that everybody's in different places.
Got it.
You know, because it's like, if we live in the same dorm, or if there is, you know, things that are scheduled and not even that we had to schedule them.
Yeah.
Then
it worked for you.
I can be myself, and I can, you know, put all of my energy into our conversations and all of the, you know, and I think that, not to blame it on this, but this is like, you know, one of those things where you realize something about yourself and you realize why it's a struggle, and then you adjust. It wasn't until I really knew and like learned more about ADHD that like I was able to kind of come out and look at it from like multiple angles. And it kind of goes back to what I was talking about before, where I was like, well, you know, like, I'm struggling with balancing everything. Like, why don't you understand that?
Right. Don't you see?
Yeah. And not recognizing that, like, that's my struggle, and it's not necessarily everybody's struggle, and so it's not necessarily that everybody's going to understand it.
Absolutely.
And if you're not able to verbalize exactly what it is, then it can look like exactly what they're feeling. You know?
Absolutely.
And so recognizing that, like, I can focus on what is right in front of me super well. You know, I mean, as far as like relationships, like you live in my house, I'm going to talk to you every day.
Right.
And
I'm out of sight, out of mind.
But out of sight, out of mind, and not because I don't want you on my mind.
It's just,
but because what's on my mind is what, like the stimulants that are right
bring
there.
It out, right.
You know, the stimulus that's right there.
Right.
And not stopping at knowing that.
And that's hard for folks that aren't with you all the time, right? That aren't around, because they just feel like they don't feel you and the love that they know that you can give.
Right. Because so there was a space where we didn't have to plan our conversations. And we didn't have to, you know, look at the schedule and, you know, keep up the text thread and like, we didn't have to have those things.
Right.
And when those things were added, I just was
overwhelmed,
you know?
Yeah.
But not staying there is the part that like I'm trying to like make sure that I'm being really intentional about. And putting systems in place.
Absolutely.
There's so many ways that like, you know, when you meet me and you don't know too much about me, like you might say, oh my goodness, like ADHD, what? No. But like, it's little things like that and the reason why you might say and think that is because over the years, like I've had to put some systems in place.
Absolutely.
And
Same.
whether I knew why I had to have those systems or not, it was just like,
Sure.
whoop, found that weakness. Let me figure out a way to mask that.
Right.
You know?
Ooh,
and it wasn't
we need to have a whole episode about masking.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It wasn't until like running into these issues because of the circumstances, and the circumstances have changed, that like I realized, okay, you need a system.
Right.
You need a system for keeping up with people.
Right. Because you fall a couple times, you're like, oh dang, hold on. Hold on, this issue.
Yeah.
This issue, and then other people see it.
Right.
And it is kind of revealed.
Yeah. And also because like I think both of, and it's something that we both struggle with. Yeah. And it's like it feels so oxymoronic because we know how much we love our friends and our sisters. Like the ones that are our friends and our sisters. Right. You know? Not like
associates or everyone in the
right. And we want to show up in the way that makes them feel that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's just, gosh, it sounds, well, it's balance, and I feel like it is quite easy for people to say, oh, just balance, just figure it out. But it's way harder said than done. You know what I mean? Like, so I think, again, it goes back to grace. I feel like so much of this is like grace. Yeah. Grace and then accountability again. Yeah. Are we just walking out the last episode? Now we're just breaking down the steps. So this is the how-to get it done. Like you said, you wanted to be more accountable and give yourself grace. Let's get to the weeds.
Yeah. This is the part that we usually set aside for sis tips. This is the part that we usually have a list of things, whether they're tried and true or whether they're just, just ideas of, how to show up in sisterhood and friendship in relation to whatever we've been talking about. And in planning for this, we really realized that we don't have those type of tips for y'all today. A lot of this episode was, us kind of sharing what it is that we're working on right now that we don't have the answers for. Like, we gave some ideas, but like it would feel a little bit inauthentic to, say, well, here's how to fix it. Yeah. Because we're just not there yet.
Yeah.
But one thing that we do know, and I want to make sure that we say this in a way that that comes from our heart, but it's also really true to who we are and what we do in situations where we don't have the answers.
Absolutely.
And it's more of like a tip for ourselves and a tip for you if you want it. But it really is one of those things where when we don't have the answers and we can't figure out, how to fix something that like maybe we brought on ourselves or maybe is just an area that we
don't understand,
don't get,
know how to deal with,
we really have had to lay it at God's feet. And, in planning for a podcast and thinking through what and how it would, our lives would come across on camera or via audio recording, we kind of have been having to grapple with, like, how do we explain this part of ourselves?
How do we show up? Sorry, just piggyback off what you're saying too. How do we create a safe space? I always think in my mind, it's so important, where conversations can be had and perspectives can be seen and people can feel seen and loved and heard. Just like we talked about, like that's the key to one of the keys to life, I feel like, but also just like your human walk.
Yeah.
How can you feel seen, heard, and loved?
Yeah.
And that's why we created this space.
Yeah.
And also to share our truth
Yeah.
and our story too. So in that same way that, you know, we hope to bring on people that can speak their truth and be able to express themselves, we want to be able to share so that you feel like you get to know us on another level. And we hope to do that more as we, you know, venture and journey more into Sisterhood.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think our challenge for our own selves is, you know, really allowing God to water these seeds, you know, allowing Him to step in and make changes that we don't really know how to make. And a part of saying that on camera and, you know, is also the part that we feel really like a big responsibility to speak to, that like that type of phrase and that statement can be triggering.
You trigger a lot
Absolutely.
of people.
Like,
Absolutely.
you know, hearing like when you don't have the answer to something, or when something feels big and heavy, and hearing someone say, oh,
Pray
give it
about
to
it.
God,
Yeah.
pray about it. Like, we absolutely know and understand how frustrating and sometimes even infuriating that can sound,
Yeah.
and how it can make you feel like, okay, well, are you really listening to my problems, or are you just putting something on, say that you said something and that you know, and we want to make sure that we say that that's not why we're saying this.
Yeah.
You know?
And that, like we've said from the beginning, is it's so important to lead in love. And so it's important for us to show up that way, have that posture of love, and that posture of service, right? In so many different ways. And so, yeah, we could go into all the different ways that we want to. And I think we're still learning. We're still, you know, new at a lot of this, but we always want to be genuine and authentic.
Yeah.
I think that's something that this platform, that's what we really want to show at this platform and in this space, is safe, authentic, genuine, and filled with love.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for us right now, that's what it is.
That's what it is. And stay tuned for more. Because, child, we going on a ride, you know, and just be down for the ride. And thank you for your support. Thank you for listening, especially if you listened all the way to the end. And just journey with us and be patient with us and know that, you know, that's the mission. Yeah. The mission is love always.
That's the real sister code.
Period.
Honestly, like, you know, we have gone back and forth between like the sister code, the real sister code, like our handles are different, but like the real sister code is no shade to anybody's code.
Anybody.
It really is the fact that our real sister code is love.
That's it, that's all. Wait for the merch. It's coming. It's coming, because you know what? We all need a little bit of love. What we need in this world today is love.
Yeah.
Love, love.
Yeah.
I wish we could play that in the beginning. Maybe we can. We love you. Talk to you next month. And hopefully our seeds are just, maybe they're blooming a little bit.
Yeah.
Hopefully we're in that new place and we can share more.
See you mid-May.
See you mid-May.
Because April showers. Hopefully
they bring
some
May
flowers.
Good. Awesome.
All
Thank you so much.
Wow.
Episode 7. You ready to do our
Let's
sign off? Let's get it. Woo! Okay. All right.
Through the ups, the downs, and the darkness, our guiding light is love.
Always love.
The real sister code.
The real sister code. Bye.
Bye.
See you next time.